I know what you're thinking. You're like, didn't she just tell us that canned sardines are the equivalent of the devil? And yes, I did. And I actually made that video after the video I'm about to show you was already filmed, was getting ready to be put out, actually. I know. Okay, before you accuse me of being some kind of hypocrite, which I would actually fully understand, that video that I filmed was mostly about the problems of processed canned sardines. It was my conversation with Emily that even opened that can of worms. Can of sardines, can of soda, can of fruit cup, like you name it, the things that come in cans that we eat that harms our health. I looked into that because of the video that I did with Emily. And then I remembered this. Wellness Warrior. This is actually the key. The challenge itself isn't the problem, it's the packaging. We're so focused on the convenience that we forgot to check the frozen and the fresh options. That's how well food companies have us trained. So, I'm extremely excited to share Emily's video that was packed with so many of her aha moments from doing the challenge because I want all of you to learn from what she learned. And we can look at the fact that we're talking about canned sardines in the video as the before Violet knew, that lost footage from history. But the core of the challenge and Emily's insights are actually so amazing that I really need for you guys to watch. So here you go. We're back with Emily because you did a sardine fast. We ended the last video with you kind of dropping that bombshell on me. And I'd, first of all, never heard of a sardine fast. But second of all, I'm kind of really curious why would anybody do a sardine fast to begin with? I'm hoping you can shed some light on this one for me because it's new.
Okay, that's a great question. Hi, Violet. Well, thank you for having me back. That was so much fun, by the way, and I've gotten fun, positive feedback. I've had fun underneath that video. Still having fun underneath that video, chatting. So why would anybody do a sardine fast? Yeah, good question. And I was wondering the same thing. I had heard about these sardine fasts. I made this up in my head that people must do sardine fasts because they just arbitrarily picked the grossest food on the planet they could think of and told themselves, you're not hungry until you're hungry enough to eat blank. That is literally what I had thought until I realized that sardines are a superfood. You know this better than I do, I'm sure. So high in omega-3s and the vitamins. And I am convinced that beef is about as good as it gets. And then eggs. And I do very much appreciate butter for the fat and the hormone health. But from what I understand now, and I'm still learning, I'm forever telling anybody that I do any of this with that we are doing this together. So I'm still learning so much. I'm certainly no expert, but I've been soaking it up like a sponge. But apparently fish is good to have incorporated in our diets, and sardines in particular. So it was Kelly Hogan that then referred me to Dr. Annette Bosworth. And she has some videos. And if it's okay with you, I'll send my little sardine playlist and you can link it below this video if you want, where she talks all about sardine fasting and the benefits of it, not only to reset our metabolism, but to get that dose of omega-3s, and then also just give our bodies any type of fasting a break from all the digesting that we normally ask them to do. So she can explain it better than I can, but I went into it hoping to feel the benefits that I hear people talk about feeling after a couple days of nothing but sardines.
My next question is, what kind of benefits did you get?
Yeah. Okay. So personally, and this is all in the little playlist because I'm following her rules. I am a rule follower. The rules of the sardine fast are you don't eat your first can. So the fast doesn't start, and they want you to do it for 3 days. She does at least 3 days to get the full benefit. You don't eat your first can until you're hungry enough for it. So that quickly turned a 3-day fast into a 4-day fast for me because I was not hungry enough to dare eat a can of sardines for a solid 24 hours. And I went ahead and ate my first can because I thought, oh, I need to get this fast going. So that alone was a nice break for me just to have 24 hours of fasting. And then I had to get over the huge hurdle. I had never eaten a sardine before.
Ah.
So I had to get over the hurdle of actually eating one. And how I couldn't hardly figure out how. Do you add mustard? Do you do this? Do you take it out? Some people air fry them, but I can tell you that I did experience the peace of mind and the clarity. The brain fog is gone. By day 2, when I had just gone one day of fasting just with water and then another day of sardines, I noticed my energy was picking up and I did feel really good. And it was also a good opportunity for me personally to, again, hone the skill of recognizing true hunger, which for me, I've said in the first video with you, I'm an accidental addict. I use sugar to keep going. So any exhaustion is when I would turn to sugar. And I still find myself wanting to do that when I'm exhausted. I want to turn to food. And a lot of times food's not the answer, rest is the answer. I have a video on my channel called Don't Quit, Learn to Rest. And so this sardine fast was a really good opportunity for me over the course of 4 days to think, okay, I've got a car full of kids. We're headed to the skating rink. I'm totally exhausted. I'm going to eat a can of sardines. And it's like, no, you're not, because you're not hungry. You're just totally exhausted. And those sardines are probably not going to solve the problem anyway. So it was good for me personally, behaviorally.
You actually started to see where you were eating just to give yourself a pep of, I'm going to move forward, but not really hungry. That's what you were doing before. Like even on carnivore, you were doing that.
Absolutely. That is a behavior that is so deeply ingrained, which is why I still do well to track, because even on carnivore, I saw someone at a concession stand once at my son's baseball game. They had a little sign, anybody need a boost? We've got coffee and hot chocolate. And I thought, that's it. That's how we all become addicted. We turn to things for a boost. And it's stimuli, it's not energy. True energy, a lot of times we're not even going to feel the benefit of it until later, after our body has started to digest it. I compare carnivore and a standard American diet with all the carbohydrates. That's like the difference between a helicopter and an airplane. So with carbohydrates, a helicopter lifts straight up off the ground. You eat sugar or carbs and you're good to go. I used to have, newborn babies, or one of my sugar binges last year, I remember thinking, I want to mow the yard, but I'm so tired. So I binged on sugar so that I could go mow that yard to give me that immediate boost. Whereas carnivore is an airplane. You do get the boost of energy, but it's so much more gradual over time. So still I find myself wanting to turn to food as a boost. And the irony is, with carnivore, you think about a lion out in the desert. If a lion eats a meal, the next thing they do is lay under a tree for a while and rest. So I've had to get used to a whole new way of operating and not use chewing and swallowing as a means to immediately push myself to keep going. I've had to learn to rest.
Maybe I'm starting to understand the point of Dr. Boz's fast might be, we're eating just this one thing. It's not a fun thing per se. I mean, I'm sure there are lots of people that love sardines. We also did the same thing when we do that challenge of beef, butter, bacon only. It's like you're just eating really three things, right? And I think the point that you came to is that you felt amazing. You had energy. I'm curious. You were only having one can at a time. It's not in terms of amount of food though. That's not a lot.
I was eating until I was full. There was, I think,
Okay.
over the course of 3 days, I think I ate 7 or 8 cans total. And there were times I would eat 2 cans at once. And then one time I got up at like midnight, I was so hungry, and I went to the kitchen and ate one can and then another can and maybe even a third. Um, but yes, and that's what she says. That's honestly another benefit to this. She said one of the best times to do a sardine fast is when life is hectic and swirling, and it simplifies things so much to just have one thing to eat. It sort of um, takes all the decision fatigue off your plate. It takes all of it just takes that part of your life and simplifies it and sort of answers the question for however many days that you've got that taken care of. So um, I thought also that I was going to see weight loss. I didn't. In 4 days, my weight was exactly to the ounce of what it was when I began. But I'm learning a lot about when we eat too little, our body sometimes won't release any fat. So I'm sure I just threw my body for a loop in a bunch of different ways. And I did not see the weight loss. I was hoping to, but I would probably do it again just for the mental clarity and the simplicity of it. And I've noticed lately in my life, I cycle between busy and extremely busy. That's how it seems. And there are some extremely busy days and weeks that doing something like that might be just beneficial mentally. It's a nice break from all the decisions of what to eat and how to eat it.
The only thing I wasn't sure about, like, well, now I understand you've never had sardines before. So that kind of clarified something for me. But part of the reason I wanted to have this chat with you is because it's amazing to me how many times I speak to people and we're talking about maybe adding liver or kidney or something because they're saying, oh, they're afraid for their electrolytes and whatnot. And the automatic answer is, I could never do that. I could never eat that. And sometimes never having tried it, which is a very interesting thing to me of like, well, shouldn't you at least try it first before you decide that you couldn't do it? Again, because you'd never tried it, I was kind of curious to know, like, was that your fear? And apparently it was. Your fear was, is it going to taste gross?
Well, there were a lot of things that I had to overcome with the sardine eating, but ultimately, and I did make a 3-hour feature film on it. I made a 3-hour video. I took the whole thing down because I just, I don't know. I like to declutter every once in a while, and I do that with my channel too. I just take some stuff down. And it wasn't nearly as impactful. Now that I talk to you, it really, there was some benefits, and it was positive. It was a fun challenge. But yes, I had to get over some hurdles, but I kept reminding myself too, these are really first world problems. So I thought, I am not going to complain about a little can of, I thought there are people doing some really, really hard things. And if I told them that the hardest thing I've done lately was eat a sardine, I might not, well, I thought, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to go for it. So now I will tell you, I ate the ones with, the bones. I did go ahead, and there was some bones in there. There's a guy with a whole channel devoted to sardines, and he's hilarious. And he helped me get over some hurdles because he just loves them. He's like, Bob Ross, the guy that painted,
Yeah.
the painter. This guy is like the Bob Ross of sardine eating. He just talks about it so cute and sweet and says, these little guys, and he just enjoyed it so much. I actually bought some chopsticks, and I have a bunch of pairs now to eat sardines with. So I kind of had to get over the texture, the taste. The taste is not bad. I think salmon patty. I think it tastes like a salmon patty. But it was good for me to have a focus, and it kept me, I don't know, it kept me busy for a few days. That's for sure.
Well, I love the fact that it got you to try something new. And I think that's a big point that I want to make today in this video, is that we're so focused on doing what's comfortable and doing what we've always done. And by doing that all the time, first of all, we're not challenging our body, but also we're not letting ourselves understand how different foods might impact us. Like, I mean, doing a one food for a few days, if you were going to react, you would have seen it. And if you're going to react in a positive way, and the nice thing here is that you reacted in a positive way. So now this is one more food in my list of foods that I actually could eat.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I have 100 cans. I overdid it. I went on Amazon and bought lots and lots. So I have lots of cans of sardines. This is good for me, Violet. I'm going to get my sardines back out.
I mean, I'm not sure how you prepared them, but I mean, obviously, even though they're already cooked, you could still like put them in things to, like, so like, I'm also thinking to myself, whenever I have sardines, it's typically I'm having it with eggs or something. So I'm kind of like everything. I feel like we don't necessarily experiment enough with our
Mhm.
healthy
Yeah,
foods, and I that's another
right.
point that I want to make is that I feel like we expect eating healthy to be boring. So then we don't think about like how are we cooking this and what are we doing. So I did find it interesting when I
Yeah.
was reading your answer to me about like it was just like it wasn't that impactful. It wasn't that, and I'm just like, how?
Well, that's true. That is very true. We it's a sort of a self-fulfilled prophecy, isn't it? We think it's going to be boring, so it is. But I actually love and crave simplicity. So I got to the point in my video where, at first I was covering them in mustard and relish and all this extra stuff. But I got to the point where by the end of that video, I knew what I was doing, and I would just drain the water or drain the oil. I didn't drain the oil at first, and that did not go well. That made me kind of sick. But I got to where I just ate those things right out of that can, and in a lot of ways, when we really are addicted to something, I we do want to keep it interesting. We want to keep it fun. We want to keep things new and fresh, but we also want to switch our focus. So it's like, if we've had this obsession with food for years and years, I years ago made a video and I called it. If your food seems boring, it might not be boring enough. Meaning, let's eat and fuel and then go have fun. And I always think of, I talk to my kids about we need to fuel up. We need to fuel up because I want them at a very early age to see food as that. And for them, they do eat sugar, but we consider that fun, not fuel. So if you're hungry, eat fuel. If you're thirsty, drink water. If you want to have something for fun, that would be a piece of cake or a cookie or a soda. They get 2 a day. And it's really neat because I can hear them saying, I'd like an ice cream cone, but I'm going to go to Nana's later. And I think I'd rather have a piece of that cake that she has. So I hear them deciding. Whereas, a few years ago, we all would have, without thinking twice, eaten 18 or 20 things a day in different ways. But I think of it as going like on a road trip, and the gas station where we get fuel is not the main event. It's not the main event. It's to fuel the fun. It's to fuel the activity. Um, and honestly, that was a benefit of the 4-day sardine fast because it does strip it right down, like you said, the BBBE challenge, the beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. When you strip it right down to just 1 or 2 foods for a time being, then you kind of learn a new way of relating to the food, a new relationship with the food where it's truly for the purpose of fueling your body. And then once you have the energy, then you can go use that energy on things that are fun and productive versus the fueling being the activity, which is, I just put a video on my channel the other day because I've gotten a couple wellness warriors over there. It's been fun. And I talked about that we want to fuel and then get on with it and not see the eating as the activity. Like my husband and I used to do all the time. What do you want to do tonight? And we knew that meant eat. And the only question was Mexican food, pizza, is all revolved around chewing and swallowing. So I'm actually doing something right now that I am getting myself in a habit of only eating during daylight hours and not after sunset. So as soon as the sun goes down, it's like, well, what do I want to do now? The eating is done for the day. I'm having to learn, Violet. I food was my entertainment for too long.
I love that too because I feel like this challenge got you to start thinking about like rethinking about that food versus and you first of all it helped you to see you were still doing it, but second of all this new thing of I'm only going to eat during daytime hours. So I do need to have something to do later or something to do in between. I feel like the interesting thing with this challenge is if I'm only eating one thing, then I start looking forward to fueling rather than looking forward to what I'm going to eat.
Right. It totally takes the what sounds good question off the table. When I did nothing but beef and butter for 7 months, I set out to do it for 61 days and I did it. My husband and I did it for 7 months. It was never what sounds good. It was, am I hungry? And not only, I like how you said that, looking forward. Not only do you look forward to fueling, um, but then you also look forward to chicken again or eggs again or steak again. It takes the things that seem so that we just really take for granted. You know, a lot of times I tell my kids, if you were lost in the desert and all there was, you know, if you could only have one thing, you'd want ice cold water. It's the best. It's the best. I want them to appreciate that water is the best, that water, just pure clean water is the best. And then I teach them that soda is really water mixed with bubbles mixed with syrup. And I show them a fountain drink. I want to educate. I want them to understand when we go into a gas station, when you get a fountain drink, you can see that it's bubbly water mixed with syrup. I said that's no different than the syrup we put on our pancakes. So if you were in the desert, you wouldn't want to drink that. It would make you more thirsty. So something like a sardine fast, only eating sardines for a few days, makes me appreciate how amazing scrambled eggs are. How amazing, you know, brisket or rack of ribs or all these other carnivore foods that I really don't want to take for granted. I want to see the good stuff as the good stuff and not be fooled into seeing um, all of the multitude of carbohydrates that come in bright shiny packages as the good stuff. But this is forever a process, isn't it? Like so much psychology, and just when you think you've turned a corner, you still got little lessons you're learning. So I'm convinced that I am going to forever be learning here.
I think so too. And it's interesting to me because when I look back on my history, like the progression to get where I'm sitting right now, for 2-ish years before I became carnivore, I sincerely ate chicken, pork, and like different types of pork and eggs with like avocado or olives.
Yeah.
Like that was it. Like I had maybe 5 or 6 meals on rotation and
Right.
vegetation twice a week. I think sometimes one of the things that I like when I have these kind of conversations with people is like we think that we really need that variety so much, and like you're having 5 meals on rotation. That's not variety. That's just like so you do end up looking forward to the meal because you're hungry, but it's not like you're looking
Uh-huh.
forward to the meal because and it's delicious. So that's interesting too. I think that when you are not eating ice cream and cookies and your food tastes so good when you're eating it because this is when I'm supposed to be eating it,
Hmm.
right? And my body's asking for it. I'm giving my body what it's asking for, and it's just great. As you live it, you understand it. And I feel like all the people that are watching right
That's right.
now who maybe are skeptical, right? There someone said to me the other day, it's like, like there's a question mark of like, do you really do this all the time? Right? Is that really what's happening? And I think that as you live your life, you start to realize absolutely. But you
Yeah.
can't know that because you don't have the experience we've had to see how much better we feel by doing it all the
Yeah.
time. I go to sleep every day because when I wake up in the morning, I feel so amazing, right? We don't fight
Right.
against
Right.
going to
Our
sleep.
baseline. That's exactly right. Our baseline, how we feel, you really don't even realize how much better you can feel, um, and probably how we're supposed to feel.
I love also the fact that your kids are getting this information so young. I can just I can just imagine that you must hear them saying things that helps you to understand that they're getting it. They're understanding.
Okay. Yes, they are so much. I'll tell you. Kelly, first of all, and I want to tell you, yes, my kids, it's wonderful. And I think, oh, I'm so glad that they at their young ages are learning this, that they're going to have so much they don't have to unlearn like we're doing, right? Kelly Hogan, I used to watch her and think, there's no way that these people aren't actually binging on sugar on the weekends. Even all these big names in the carnivore. I couldn't, like you were saying, I couldn't wrap my mind around, do you really eat this way? Do you really, um, is this really how you really eat? I was so like you were saying, I used to be so skeptical until I finally got on the other side. And you can get on the other side of addiction. You have to be intentional to stay there, to be in recovery. but you can get on the other side to where you're finally truly not craving. And I compare it to getting out of a terrible, terrible relationship that was so hard to get out of. And just imagine some type of boyfriend from high school, girlfriend from high school, just some awful dramatic relationship that was tumultuous and makeup and breakup. And I don't know. I never really experienced this personally, but I can imagine from friends and things I've witnessed. But you finally get out of this relationship and then you get into a new one that's all you've ever dreamed of and you feel amazing. You would not be tempted to go back there. You would say, oh, that bridge has been burned. I don't ever want to go back. I'm finally unhooked. And that's how it can finally feel with our relationship with carbohydrates and sugar. And it takes a while and it's a process and there's a lot of falling down and getting up. There's a lot of, they say it's not how many times you fall down, but how many times you get up. It's funny. I was leading a group yesterday. So I lead a couple different groups of women throughout the week, one inside the jail, one outside the jail. And when they get out of the jail, they can join my one. When they're out of the jail, they can join me at the one that's in my church. So I want a seamless transition there so they can still meet with me once a week, in or outside. Anyways, I was at this meeting yesterday and we talk a lot about addiction and recovery. And I told him, let's meet at Dairy Queen and we'll have breakfast before we go over to this girl's house. We were going to help her do some work around the yard. And they said, Emily, and I tease a lot about falling face first into a Dairy Queen cake or a Reese's Blizzard. Do you all have Dairy Queen?
Yeah,
Is
we do.
this right? All right, just making sure. I know if I head further south, they've got all sorts of restaurants. We don't have In-N-Outs and we don't have Whataburger. I don't know. There's all sorts. So this girl in my group said, Emily, are you sure you want to meet at Dairy Queen if you struggle with, she was talking about Dairy Queen cakes and blizzards. And I laughed and I thought, you know what? I've actually come so far. I tease about Dairy Queen and I tease about ice cream, but that's so foreign to me. It would seem so, it's nowhere I want to go back. So now I have a new form of struggle, which could be more cheese or dairy. There has been this evolution of where I've come from. And that's what I relate it to, just having gotten out of a horrible relationship. I'm in a great one now. I want to do everything I can to reinforce and grow and build this new relationship I'm in. I want to try SARDINE FAST and just all of the above. There's so many things that we can do and try and link up you and me and different channels and new friends and new conversations and new YouTube videos. I want to keep heading down this particular path that I'm really not tempted. I'm not even tempted. No more than, if you got a text from that guy that you hadn't talked to for 10 years and it's like, that is the old me. That is history. I don't even want to step foot there. We've really come a long way. I told a girl recently, she had gotten out of jail and she was in rehab and I visited her and she said, I'm really struggling. And we sat there on the couch of this rehab facility she was in. She's living with a group of women. And I pointed out to her, I said, you are struggling, but you are not struggling the way you were when I met you 6 months ago, sitting in a jail cell wearing orange from head to toe. And she laughed and she said, wow, you're right. So Violet, we'll always be struggling. We will always, I believe that. We'll be 95 years old struggling with something, but we are not struggling with what we once were. And now that I've gotten certain monkeys off my back, I want to keep them there. So.
And I also feel like it matters how we came to no longer be struggling. There's a lot of people that you will meet and their entire day is about avoiding cookies, avoiding cake, like that's what they do. It's like they're constantly trying to stay away, trying to be good, as they'll say. And the problem that I see that people just don't see is that if I'm trying to be good, it means I really want to eat that thing. I can tell you with all honesty that when I go with family or friends to a restaurant and there's nothing on the menu for me, I have zero desire to eat the things on the menu that are not for me. I'll order some coffee, I'll order some bubbly water. I'm fine with that. I'm not eating things that are going to harm me. And I feel like, again, it's so hard for people to put their mind around that, first of all. But I think second of all, when you get there, life just feels so much easier.
Well, what you said, some people spend their whole day working to avoid that. I would say that they are still tangled with it. And obviously, they're still tangled up in it. Making this very strong intentional effort to stay away from it, that's like holding your breath. You can only hold it for so long, and this can't be about that. This can't be about holding our breath, because eventually you will gasp for breath, just like we will gasp for calories, we will gasp for sugar. When I hear people that are still working so hard, they're missing the point. They're like in this rushing river and they're trying to swim upstream, and they need to get into a different body of water. They need to get into an entirely different body of water, because one thing I say often is that white knuckles, when we're white knuckling, when we're trying really hard and we're working really hard, and it feels really, really difficult, white knuckles are red flags. So if you have white knuckles, that's a red flag that you're probably not experiencing the freedom. And it's probably because you're still trying to moderate, honestly. There are times in life where it does require, we have to abstain. You know, it's funny, Violet, here's how far I've come. The other day I stopped on my way home from a jail that was 2.5 hours from my house. I stopped at a barbecue place and I got chicken and some pork, and I got their sauce. And I know well enough that barbecue sauce, mild, has sugar usually. So I try to get hot sauce that's more like vinegar based, if I'm going to get any sauce at all. And I asked them if it had sugar, and they had told me no previously, but when I got it, oh, it sure looked like it. It looked thick. It looked shiny. I can spot the sugar, and I tasted it, and it tasted sweet, and I enjoyed it. But when it was done, I wanted to track my calories, and I called them back. And sure enough, I talked to someone different that said, oh, yeah, that does have sugar in it. And you know, the old me would have said, oh, oops. Well, then I just messed up. So I might as well go to Dairy Queen. I might as well go, it's like throw in the towel, right? Just forget it. Just and the that's what the old me would have done. The new me says, oh, well, then I won't ever get that sauce again. Because like you said, if you go somewhere now, if they bring me my meal and I asked for the French fries on the side, or if I asked so that I can give them to my kids, or I don't even want carbohydrates touching my food. I don't want to pick the bun off a burger because I don't want bits of it on there. I don't want it. I don't want it. I'm By the grace of God, I'm in a different body of water now. I want to stay here. I like it. I want to stay here, and I don't want to go back to that. That was such a vice, such a grip. One of the hallmarks of addiction is first you take it to feel good, then you take it to feel normal.
Mm-hmm.
I needed sugar just to function. And you think you're controlling it, and really it's controlling you. And I don't want any part of it. So it's an evolution progression of struggling, and I'm still struggling in ways. And again, I will struggle my way through this entire human experience. We'll always be struggling, but we're not struggling the way we were.
I also think it's about trusting myself. Because I asked the waitress or the waiter or the whoever, is there sugar in this? And they say, no, no, there's no sugar in it. But then when I taste it, if I taste sugar, your definition of sugar
Right.
might not be my definition of sugar. And I feel like that's an
Right.
interesting thing, right? Because there might not have been actual sugar in it, but there might have been some pineapple or some whatever that whenever you boil it down and reduce it, that's sugar. And so I think it's trusting yourself. Did that taste sweet to me? And okay, so we'll add another layer here. Whenever you taste sweet, whether there's sugar or not, so now we're talking even artificial sweeteners, your brain registers sugar's coming in and it starts doing all the things it would normally do, even though there's no sugar coming in. So, regardless, if it tastes sweet to you, I would stop there.
I agree. Thank you, Violet. I know. What? That's why some of this does require some integrity, because my addiction wants what it wants, and it wants sugar, and sugar tastes good, and it's nice and sweet, right? So when I taste some barbecue sauce, I'm thinking they told me it doesn't have sugar, but it tastes awful good. And And you know what? It's just ultimately it's not worth it. A friend of mine yesterday was texting, and she said, "Oh, I made a bowl of ice cream for my husband." And I said, "Listen, you remind that brain of yours that you can have that ice cream if you want. You can eat whatever you
Yeah.
want. You don't want it. It comes with a host." I said, "This is a choice we're making. We can feel empowered." And you're right. People, I was at a little festival the other day, and they were selling beef jerky. And I said, "Does your beef jerky have sugar?" And they said, "Oh, very little, very little." And I said, "Well, very little is more than I really want to consume." And they sure wanted to sell it. So I've also not only got to trust myself, but probably not trust them because they want to sell it. So they're probably going to give you the answer you want a lot of times. Does your sauce have sugar? Oh no, it doesn't. When they may not know, or they may not even consider sugar. Hey, speaking of what my kids were saying earlier, you said that the kids have learned a lot. This is wonderful to me. They come home and they say, "Mama, can you believe this? At school, there's 2 days a week. There's no meat offered at breakfast, so I always make sure to make them a big meaty breakfast before they go to school. But they come home and say, 'Mama, they won't give us real butter. They just give us margarine. They won't let us have salt anymore.'" And so they come home to me and they're just blown away at how opposite. And they say, "Look, they call this healthy." And they said, "My friend, I was looking at their lunch and they had 10 things in their lunch and they had to open every single one of them out of cellophane." So my kids are starting to recognize that all these things that are in bags and boxes that we tear open, my kids are starting to pick up that each one of those would count as one of their sugar flowers. So, and then one day my daughter was playing a game on Roblox.
Okay.
I don't know what it was, but it was a game where it was something on her tablet. And she came to me and she said, "Mama, on this game I was playing, you could get healthy points for eating healthy. You could get points for your character." And she said, "I tried to eat a hot dog on this little game, and they told me that would deduct points because that was bad for me. But I could get points if I ate a salad and all this like fruits and vegetables." And she said, "So, Mama, I did it. I did it, but I only did it because it was on this game." So that's pretty cute. My kids are starting to become aware that meat has everything they need. And when they're hungry, I want them to eat meat. So they're picking up on it, Violet.
You see the messages are everywhere, which is the other part of this, right? She's playing a game, and the message is that the salad is better than the meat. I'm sure she would have tried to have a steak and been like, "Oh my gosh, you're losing 2 points there." Yeah, they're pushing this narrative that says that the healthy foods aren't healthy.
Yeah, it's the old food pyramid. Greg and I, my husband, we have all this cattle, and we just think if there was some type of doomsday apocalypse, we'd be set. And everybody want to eat sugar and leaves. I don't know. They might be wanting our cattle. We are convinced that beef, a steak, some ribs, some meat, eggs, this is where the nutrition is, and this is what we want to be eating, and this is what we want to be feeding our family. And again, you and I've said this before, but there's not a whole lot of money to be made if these packages, these companies, they're all pushing all of this. And I think of something like trail, whatever these mixes are, these party mixes where it's like Doritos, pretzels, Chex Mix, all of this in one big bag for a big party. I think that literally looks like what they must have gotten when they swept the floor at that factory. It just doesn't even look like food anymore. It just doesn't even look like food anymore. So, but you're right. It is a narrative that they're pushing. And they're aimed at the kids, all these boxes and colors, and they're also aimed at moms saying, "Here, this is prepackaged and easy." This does take a little preparation. You got to cook and but I'll go cook 40 pounds of bacon, 100 burger patties. I've got a griddle in my backyard. I'll just cook and cook and cook for hours and hours, and then we're set for a while. But it's interesting to see.
Another thing that I'm wondering about for you, like, and I've done this, like those replacement bread, right? So, like when I started my journey, there was an almond flour bread that I was making, like back in when I was still doing keto, like, well, at the beginning of when I did keto. But then you kind of fast forward, and I learned about almond flour, so that went out the door. But I more like in the last 3 years, I think it was, I found a carnivore bread. Now, I've made it, and honestly, it's not bad. But the question that I'm more having today, now that I'm like, I fast forward in my life, is first of all, the complications to make this thing, not the easiest thing to make. But second of all, and I think the question for you is, I don't know, like with your kids and like, so this whole idea of sandwiches, I feel like they have us so brainwashed that we have to eat certain things at a certain time. Like how do you have a sandwich? That's a question that I got so many times when I went keto and then eventually carnivore. It's like, but how do you have a sandwich? I think that it's so normal for us to just believe that all of these things are what's supposed to happen. We don't realize that, go back 400 or 500 years, they just didn't have sandwiches.
Exactly. I totally agree. And that's why I am fascinated with this whole thing. I can't get enough of human behavior, why we do what we do, psychology. I love it all so much. I'm just forever interested in why human beings do what they do. And, it's a lot of why I love the kids in my class when I taught school, kids with severe behavior. I might have mentioned everyone in my classroom had been kicked out of the middle school or the high school. So these were kids with the worst of the worst behavior. I had, kids that would come to me straight from juvenile detention. I had, little bitty miniature convicted felons in my class that did go on. I've had students go on to, a couple of them have killed people and they've spent time in prisons. These are kids that are struggling about as much as anybody could struggle. But go to their home, visit their house, see what their life is like, and then criticize their behavior. These little kids are waking up and their mom's on drugs, or their mom's asleep, or their mom's in jail, and they're getting themselves and their little brothers up out of the house. They're picking out dirty laundry out of their stepfather or their mother's boyfriend clothing pile. They're just trying to find something to wear, and they come to school. And it makes you realize really, really quickly that I always like to say, we are not our bodies. We are in them. These are vehicles. We want to take good care of them. And it's A-okay with me if mine ages. I want it to do that. I want to age. We are not our bodies, and we are not our behaviors. These are just things we do. And so often we do them, and you can trace it back to figure out why we do them. So again, I had a lot of compassion for my students with terrible behaviors, because you can see how their behavior would end up like it is. And it's so funny with regards to this and this way of eating, Violet. This has cracked all this open for me too. Why do we do what we do? You talked about 400 years ago, people weren't eating sandwiches. I heard that the way sandwiches came about was there was a king somewhere. I don't know. I do not have the details here, but it was to take bread instead of meat and a side of bread. They cut the bread, opened it, put the meat inside, and he was able to take it with him wherever he was going. And so there was the birth of a sandwich, where we could then
around. To be able to take meat around.
Thank you. It was the meat carrier, right? The bread was the meat carrier. So we put the bread on the meat so that we can walk around and hold it in our hands, just for the convenience of being able to do that. And so yes, what you're talking about is conditioning. It's just conditioning. We've been conditioned to believe that we need some sort of bread with our meal. And my kids, every once in a while, I let them have a free bread, and I say, yeah, go ahead and have a sandwich. But for the most part, I give them meat at lunch. And if they want to turn it into a sandwich, sometimes I tell them, you're going to have to count that as one of your 2 sugar flours for the day. And they say, well, forget that. I don't want 2 pieces of white bread. I'd much rather have an ice cream cone later when we go out. So you're exactly right. The things we do, and if you trace it back to why we do them, it's really nonsensical for us to continue. I used to hear Dr. Phil say, we do one thing for one reason, but we continue it for another. It's like the old joke that one lady, whenever she would make a roast, she would cut the end off and put it in the pan. And somebody said, why do you do that? Because my mother did that. Well, then she went to her mother and said, why do you do that? Because my mother did that. And she finally went to the grandma and said, why do you do that? Why are generation after generation, why are we cutting the end of this roast off before we put it in the pan? And finally, the great grandmother said, I don't know why you ladies are doing it, but I had to cut the end off because my pan was so small.
Yeah.
So the joke is, if we don't zoom out a little bit and think about why we're doing what we're doing, we might just be like zombie, the emoji with the eyes swirling, robots doing what we're doing just because everyone else is. And for the very most part, that's exactly, these companies have us right where they want us, not thinking critically, and just blindly consuming what they tell us is good for us. And I am glad here in my early 40s, I don't buy it anymore. I don't buy that that's what's good for us. So let's think critically and use these brains we have.
I was shocked years ago. Like maybe it was like 2 years ago, they put out that new food guide thing where they were like walking you through like what was good and what wasn't good. And Cheerios beat
Heart healthy.
all kinds of meaty things. Like it was insanity that all the real food was near the bottom of the list and
Uh-huh.
all the fake foods were at the top, and this was seen as what we should be doing. It was craziness. But the hard part is that people will look at that and say, well, but this is what the doctors are saying. It's not what the doctors are saying. This is the other thing that's kind of frustrating, is that we are told things as if doctors are saying this, right? Because the doctors will come and parrot to us, oh, the new standards is this or that or whatever. But who funded any of those studies? Food companies.
Right.
Always food companies.
Right.
And we are letting food
Always.
companies decide what's healthy for us to eat. Makes no sense whatsoever. And that's what's happening.
And that's funny you said that about Cheerios. When I walked through Walmart a couple months ago, my youngest daughter was 7 at the time. She goes, Mama, look at that. And she rolled her eyes and she said, look at that box of Cheerios. It says it's healthy for your heart. And she just was like mocking Cheer. I said, that's right, girl. Give me a high five. That is not healthy for your heart. A friend of mine had a stroke last week, and I saw her yesterday morning. And how are you doing? And she's still got double vision and half of her face is still struggling and numb. And I said, what did they tell you? What did they tell you? And she said, well, they put me on cholesterol medicine. And listen, I'm no doctor, but I could not connect that dot. Um, you know, a blood clotting issue, and then people are just so quick to villainize the red meat and the cholesterol. And there's a lot of really, really smart people that are sharing now that this is not, nor has it ever been. I can also send you something else. It's never been the enemy since the 1950s when Eisenhower had a heart attack, and they said, "Oh, it was the red meat. It was the red meat." This was also right around the time that studies were coming out of Harvard saying that the red meat was the enemy and that sugar was harmless and it was just empty calories. And then you get tangled up with all these processed seed oils that, what they have to do to them for them to even be okay for human consumption, and the red tape they had to cross to make it to where they could even get it past the Food and Drug Administration and get it into the hands of the public. It was deemed inedible in the 1980s. Soybean oil was inedible, and it is so disgusting. It makes me think of motor oil. They have to actually deodorize it before it can be anything a human being would want to consume. And we know that it destroys our mitochondria. I'll send you a link to that too. It's one of these blogs that I listened to from this Christian nutritionist, and it just changed it was immediately life-changing, and I won't buy soybean oil anymore. So the ways in which we've been lied to and fooled over the years, like you talk about the Cheerio and the studies, and you look at who's funding it, and it just it's just a good reminder to be your own advocate.
It's also very scary to think that all these seed oils that we're using did start as lubricants for cars and all the big machinery and etc. And I think I'm trying to remember like how many years back was it where in they switched from tallow in restaurants over to these seed oils, and a few of the restaurants actually burned down because the oil combusted. It's like these are things that we have documented in history, and yet still we're somehow eating this stuff. Tallow never combusted. I just feel like sometimes we look at the actual events that happened and close our eyes.
Well, they're thinking, we've sold a lot of this, but how could we sell more? I don't know. Maybe if we put it in everything, then we could sell more. There's sucralose and aspartame in some chapsticks. There's sugar, there's sweetener, I should say, in things that are not even for consumption, just like I said, lip gloss, the seed oils, and just the mass producing of these things they're destroying our health. And when you think of it on a cellular level, so our mitochondria, that's every cell of our body. I think of it as a brick house, and there a tornado could come through and take the roof off. A car could accidentally run into a house and knock off a corner of it. But that house is in really bad shape if there's something that is destroying the integrity of each individual brick. And that's what these seed oils do. They attack each individual cell. And if we're getting attacked on a cellular level, it might be something that you don't notice as quick as, an amputated arm or the roof coming off your house. But if you compare it to a brick house, that is pervasive, and boy, it's just headed in the wrong direction. And again, these bodies we're in are very, very important. We couldn't be here on Earth without them. And I want mine to last as long as possible. So there is a new motivation. I have had friends that said, listen to that last video between you and me. And they said, thank you for the reminders of these things. It's so good for me to chat about them too, because it's very motivating and energizing for me to be reminded of just how calculated these companies are that are selling us all this stuff, and they're selling it to us in more ways than one. We're literally buying it mentally, physically, and literally chewing and swallowing it right down. I also wanted to mention, when you were talking earlier about conditioning, and I have to be careful listening to certain carnivores, because there are plenty of people that are doing well, it seems like, and have lost a lot of weight, but are still so excited and focused on the food to the point where they are forever in the kitchen making recipes. And I always say I would just rather be outside mowing the yard. So I'd rather train this brain of mine to eat food for fuel and then go use it, rather than it be the focus of my day. And I'm not saying that's there's nothing inherently wrong with that if you can live a happy, healthy lifestyle and it be such a focus. But I've had to make sure that who I listen to are, for me personally, not the carnivores that are forever finding new ways to make carnivore ice cream. They're not the carnivores that are telling you what to order at every single restaurant, because I get in trouble if I eat at too many restaurants. Then my brain is just lit. I always say, if your addiction is what's lighting your brain, it's about the only thing lighting your brain, not your children, not your marriage, not your home, not your hobbies. If you're tangled up in your addiction, that's really, it's very, very consuming. So I did want to share that. And then also these sneaky addictions. I wrote this down here. Did you know, can I change the subject?
Sure.
It's all related.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you know, here's a little nugget. Here's a little nugget for your viewers. When I first started getting off of sugar with that diet that I had mentioned before, and I was really aiming to not eat sugar, I didn't realize I was still eating lots and lots of sugar in the form of in the form of fruit and bread, and vegetables, any sort of carbohydrate. But Violet, I started noticing that I was salting my food like crazy, like not a little sprinkle, like a 6-inch snow. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is so interesting. Have I, because I'm real interested in human behavior, especially my own. So don't get me wrong. I'm not just, I am trained in observation. I've been trained to observe behavior, but I do the same thing myself. So I started to notice, and again, with no shame, it's all very scientific. But I thought, why am I salting my food so much? And I thought, have I switched my addiction from sugar over to salt? And about a week later, I was on YouTube, I guess, and I listened to a woman that said, be careful if you use iodized salt, because iodized salt has sugar in it.
Oh, yes.
There. There's your mind blow for, yeah, if you've never heard that, there you go. My mind was blown. That was again one of those pivotal life-changing moments for me. And I thought, no way. And I got my iodized salt out of the cabinet, turn it over, look at the ingredients, and there it is. If it ends in OSE, that's sugar. So fructose, sucralose, dextrose, glucose, there it is right there. Dextrose is what bonds the iodine to the sodium. It's the glue. And my addiction is so, I was honestly a little bit impressed with my addiction. That was so sophisticated to get me to eat lots of salt. So now I do Redmond's real salt, or I just make sure it's not iodized.
Well, you can find salt that's iodized that doesn't have sugar in it, though.
Oh, okay, great,
Which
great.
is helpful to know because iodine is
That
something
is-
that we actually need quite a bit
yes,
of.
I add iodine to my water every day because I don't use iodized
Yeah,
salt.
that's terrific. But yeah, I was
Yeah.
shocked because I do have some in my cupboard that I did because I saw a video from Dr. Saladino who pointed out
Okay.
that all those little packets of salt in the McDonald's have sugar in them.
Have
And
sugar in them.
apparently
Okay.
the sugar is to keep it from sticking together. The salt. Salt would naturally stick
Um,
together, apparently. Um, but I know that some of the Himalayan salts don't have the sugar in it.
right.
And you can have companies that have two versions, one with sugar and one without. It's the
Isn't that
same
wild?
stuff, but so I don't know
Yeah.
why that is, but
Yeah. Okay.
they're saying, "Oh, it's
Just
gonna clump." It's
another little tidbit.
yeah, it doesn't clump all the time because mine wasn't clumped.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, and thank you for adding to that. But it's interesting and mind blowing. Now I do like flaky salt, and so I get a big 3 pound tub of that off Amazon and sprinkle that on steaks and stuff. But you got to just check those ingredients. People ask me, which hot dog should I get? What this should I get? What that? I say, flip it over, look at it, read it.
That's a frustration of mine when people just want a list of foods that, oh, this is what's safe to eat. And I feel like it's a frustration for two reasons. First of all, like you're basically saying you don't want to do any work to get good health. That's impossible. You have work to do. And if the smallest amount of work, which is finding out what foods to eat, you can't do, it doesn't matter if I give you a list, you're not going to do it. But the second reason that I feel is really a bad thing is that if I would have just followed a food list, chances are I probably would have not figured out or understood why all those nightshade vegetables were messing with me. If I was just eating what I was told to eat, I might have just thought the diet itself didn't work. But
Yeah.
I have a problem with nightshades. Me, not everybody. I do.
Okay.
So it's like, I can't give you a list. What if you have a problem with the things that I'm able to eat?
That's a good point. And we can have our own our own personalized, customized red red light, green light, yellow light foods. And I've recently reintroduced pickles because they don't give me any trouble at all. I'm happy to have the electrolyte from the pickle juice. And I kind of like that, especially with being such a rule follower that I am. I like that I've had to take a deep breath with all of this and say, you know what? I am definitely a carnivore. I heard Candy Frazier recently say, human beings are carnivores, whether they admit it or not. She said that is the diet that we were created to eat. I don't know if she used the word created, but she made a good point that something like a raccoon, that's a carnivore that will also eat junk out of a garbage can. So I'm carnivore whether I add pickles or not, but you're right. Here's something in my yellow light lately. I went to the gas station the other day with my husband. It was just the two of us, which is very, very rare to not have kids with us. And we wanted some pork rinds and some sparkling water, right? We're just going wild and crazy. And they only had sparkling water with lime flavor. I did get it. I didn't love it, but I made sure it did. I made sure it didn't have any sugar. It just said natural flavor, which is still its own euphemism for probably some stuff we don't want. And then they had pork rinds with barbecue, and I went ahead and got him and me some too. And it is still zero carbohydrate, But that paragraph up underneath there of words you can't even pronounce, and some of them are I can pronounce the GMO, the monosodium
Yeah.
glutamate. Am I saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just disgusting. It's just disgusting chemicals. But I can eat it. You know, fortunately, our bodies can filter out some poison. It's not ideal, but you know what you were saying when you said it's not ideal. But again, it's light years from where we were. It's light years from where we were, and I really think it's important. I almost can't overstate that we've got to celebrate progress. We've got to see that we are not where we were. I was telling the ladies this morning or yesterday morning in a group, there's no such thing as gaining your weight back.
No, it's new weight.
You know, it's new weight. Thank you. It's brand new weight. And you know what? It came from life experience. I compare it to tuition from school. And when you've been through the school of life and you've had a hard season and you put weight on after maybe the death of a family member or you know, going to school or the birth of a baby. That's brand new weight. It's tuition from the school of life that you can get out of. It is temporary. Don't let yourself think it's permanent. And don't let yourself think you're back where you started. You're not. We're not going in circles. It is linear and we're always further along than we've ever been. So mentality is huge here.
I also think that when you talk about like life events happening, what's really huge that we often gloss over is that a life event happens that's difficult. Why is eating the wrong food the solution? And it really isn't. So you have a difficult situation and then you turn and make your life even more difficult because now you're going to be mad at yourself. Now your body's going to be back in pain. Now, and I really encourage people to like, before you start letting yourself kind of off the hook and eating things that you know are going to cause problems. How about remembering that, but I'm still here, right? I'm still doing the thing. And so eating the wrong food isn't actually giving me anything but more hurdles that I will need to get over. I think one of the things for me that again people find really odd and part of the reason that people keep questioning that I never do you never fall? I fall about life stuff, not about food stuff. Right? I'm of course I make mistakes, but I've already made the food mistakes, saw what it did to my body, and recognized that that's not fun. So, but in life, I couldn't have lived every problem that's ever going to come up. Of course, those things get me, but food stuff that I've done, and that stuff doesn't get me.
That's true. There are things in life that we can ultimately master. And again, we can ultimately master this as long as we keep an awareness that again the dry riverbeds there are still there and we could I don't ever want to be so naive as to think I've completely got this whipped, but I also want to point out that sometimes yes, we gain weight because we've turned to the wrong things, which does, like you said, only compound the problem. Don't do it to yourself. Pamper, not punish. Pamper yourself. Don't punish yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been really wonderful. I noticed when we meet on these in these groups that I lead, we talk about um, well, some progress that we've seen in our lives. And I said, you know what? I did not turn to binge eating the other night the way I normally would have. And so I can recognize it's so important to stop long enough to recognize and appreciate, to reinforce that new things are happening and we're behaving in new ways. I just almost cannot stress that enough, that it's so important to even just stop and recognize it. Like when you see one of your kids doing the right thing, praise them for it, because we live up to labels. We want to reach these expectations that other people have for us and that we have for ourselves. But we will do that by being aware that we are making progress. It's not all for none, but there are times in life, and Kelly Hogan pointed this out the other day. She has a recent video about, she said, I'm going to tell you a little story, and it's on her channel, but she talked about, she kept her food exactly the same, and her food is about exactly the same every day. And during a very stressful event where she got into an accident rafting, she was out in the water, she gained weight. And I have noticed that lately. I've kept my food pretty well the same, but I've had such a stressful week that I just feel so, I'm actually doing a water flush today just because our body has this physiological response to stress, and it can then retain water or retain, even if we're keeping our eating the same, our weight is going to fluctuate whether we want it to or not. And that's why I do hear so many people, and it's like, how long is it going to take me to finally get this? But when we can learn to manage and decrease stress in our lives, then our bodies will follow suit. The being overweight, being swollen, being puffy, being all these things, those are really byproducts. Those are really symptoms of a greater problem. And one of the greatest problems that we all face since the beginning of time is stress. So yes, sometimes we turn to the wrong foods, but sometimes we gain weight just because our body is having a very negative response to the stress.
I would also say that we don't understand stress enough. So, when I'm stressed, my body releases cortisol. When my body releases cortisol,
Uh-huh.
my body also, cortisol causes my body to release some sugar. Why? Because
Yeah.
usually when you're stressed, you need to run from an animal or wrestle an
Some
animal,
energy.
or right, you're trying to stay alive somehow in our history of
Right.
being human.
Right.
But today our stresses are, my boss wants this paper tomorrow, or my spouse is angry at me and won't let it go, or and so that stress is there sometimes for weeks. So you have a drip of sugar coming in sometimes for weeks, which of course causes now inflammation in the body, and possible weight gain, and all the things start happening because of this constant drip that's happening. So I feel like it's also, knowing what's happening in my body encourages me to do the right thing, right? Because I know that's happening, I'm going to solve the problem rather than eat the food that makes me feel better for 5 seconds. Because when I finish eating that food, my stress is back because I didn't solve the problem. So I feel like,
100%.
yeah, there's so many of these kind of things where like the data is there, but we are not aware of it. Companies are aware of it.
True.
We are not aware of it.
That's true. And when our cortisol is spiked, our insulin is spiked.
Yep.
And when our cortisol and our insulin is spiked, then we're in fat storage mode. And it's all our body's attempt to help us deal with the John Gabriel. I read his book years ago, probably 10 years ago, the Gabriel method. And he opened my eyes to the fact that our bodies are either in fat storage mode or fat burning mode, but all in an effort to help us manage stress. So we would be in fat storage mode when our body interprets the stress of a famine or cold temperatures because it thinks, oh, you need extra fat. We'd be in fat burning mode if we think we're going to get chased by a saber-toothed tiger and we need to be able to run. So you can see certain people, and I used to be kind of jealous one way or the other and think, gee, I wish my body operated like that. But now I'm content with where I am and I'll
Oh,
just deal with what I have. I've heard people say if we all put our problems in a big pile, we'd be real quick to grab our own back out. But you can see some people, stress will affect them where I mean, I can look back over my pictures and everywhere I was my heaviest, that was a very stressful point of life. But some people get really thin when they're stressed because of the way their body responds to the stressors. But again, it's, we all want to look in the mirror and tell our bodies how much we hate them, and we ought to be saying thank you for trying to keep me alive despite everything I'm doing to try to destroy you.
and
So,
honestly, we think we would want the other side of the coin, but it's not fun. Because in my youth, I was one of those stress can't
okay.
eat people,
Oh,
and
okay.
it was not a fun place to be. So we think we
Yeah.
would want it, but no,
True.
it's
That's true.
just as bad.
That's true. One of my sons, I mean, it was really stressful for him. He wanted to go to the pediatrician at 17 years old to find out about, what he could do to gain weight. He was struggling. I did want to touch on something when you said earlier when people don't want a list or they want a list and you don't want to give them a list. Violet, something that I've noticed when we want to change behavior, a lot of times we have to use external motivators. So the carrot dangling in front of the horse, right? And that'll get us to move in the direction we want to go. So forever and ever, I always said, I've got videos on this, but instead of digging through, I'll just give you here in a nutshell. That we want to reward our way to the direction we want to go. Now, we can use external rewards here, but eventually we want to do that only as long as until the habit is built. And then, like you said, you and I are to the point now where we get it, we see it. We've seen the light. We've gotten on the other side of all of this, and that's when it truly goes from needing external motivation to internal, and that's when people aren't so desperate to have someone else tell them what to do or say because they've truly started to experience it um, for themselves.
Yeah, part of the reason that I have this well, first of all, you'd be surprised how many times that I have talked to people about what to eat and whatever, and the overwhelming feedback that I get eventually is towards, that's too complicated. That's too much work. That's it. Because what's really happening is I'm now listing all the foods you have to now cook versus go into the freezer, pull out something and put it. And what I think is interesting is that when you do the research yourself, first of all, chances are very good at least once or twice a week you're cooking. So that's going to start with that once or twice a week. The thing, whatever you're cooking, you might switch it out for something healthier. And that's a slower progression towards doing it all the time. But for so many people, there's a blockage on, I'm going to go to the grocery store and I'm going to buy everything different. I'm going to throw the stuff that I have. There's a blockage there. And so I could give you a list, but it doesn't change much.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember the first time I had ever even heard the term carnivore, I was at a baseball game late at night, and a friend of mine was eating a burger patty, this man. And then someone told me he had recently lost 100 pounds on the carnivore diet. And I was like, what is that? I don't get it. And they said, oh, he only eats meat. And I remember my initial response to that was, or reaction, I should say, was, oh, like, that's crazy. No, because you can't imagine it, because we've been so without, I had this word is so cliche at this point. It's so overused, I think, but we've truly been brainwashed. We've been convinced that it's and it is so normalized to consume so much processed foods every day. And that you're right. That is the hang up for a lot of people. One thing that my husband and I have noticed is we are eating this way, and it has solved all of our problems.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that sounds like an exaggeration, but in some ways it's not. He and I both are in, I'll be 44 soon. He's 45, and we are on zero medication.
Yeah.
And zeros, and we got off everything. This diet solved all of our problems. But this is what I've noticed, and you probably have too. I have friends that are trying everything. They're going to every doctor, they're taking every pill, and they're shelling out thousands of dollars, and they're getting surgeries. If the trouble is weight, they're doing everything they could possibly do. And then you mention this, and it's like, oh, I could never. It's as if they'll try everything but this. And I have 3 family members with multiple sclerosis that I've shared this with, and I've started a playlist. If any of your viewers want it, I've got a playlist on this diet and MS and what it's doing for people. And the people that I've sent this diet to and told them a little bit about, it's just crickets. It's just crickets. They have no questions. They say, no, thank you. And they are going to go on their merry way, eating what the doctor tells them to eat, and taking what the doctor tells them to take. And I'm just thinking, it's so mind blowing to me that we are so extremely conditioned. It's so pervasive. It's such a way of life that they won't even consider not eating sugar. So having said that, you and I both know we could sit here for 10 hours and share everything we could possibly share. And there will be people that'll be positively affected, but there will also be people that will forever choose to stay right where they are, because apparently for them, it's worth it.
Well, but they think that what they're doing is the right thing. Like, we're telling them that this is the right. I mean, even if you look at me, I didn't start carnivore. I started keto. And I was in pain like 6 months before I started keto. I was in pain and not able to do what I'm doing right now. Sit on a chair for more than 45 minutes. We've been talking now, it's more than 45 minutes for sure. And I wasn't able to do this. And even when I found the answer and I saw that I have an inflammation problem, the answer is diminish the sugar you're eating, I didn't believe it. It took me a month and a half after reading that first bit of information because I was looking for an alternative to surgery. So let's be clear. I was looking for an alternative.
Okay.
And when I read
Yeah.
that, it took me another month and a half of research to really prove to myself sugar causes inflammation. So,
Okay.
and I
Yeah.
was in a painful scenario. Now,
Yeah.
you add to that all the family members that knew my story, knew my situation, saw me limping around.
Yeah.
3 months later, I'm walking like a normal person. 3 months. And nobody cares enough to say, oh my gosh, I got to do that too.
Gotta do that
It doesn't
too.
make
Yeah.
sense, right? 5 months later, I'm at this weight, from down
Right.
80 pounds. Nobody was interested in doing what I'm doing.
I know.
It
I know.
makes,
But a lot of people are. A lot of people are
I
interested.
mean, in my
That's
family,
just
I'm talking about just like
okay. Okay.
specifically
Sure.
like the people that are
You-
watching me go through this. And I think
Yeah.
honestly, it took until 2 years later before I got the first questions. Why? Because I'm sure they were sure I was going to put it back on, like everybody
Oh,
does,
that's true.
right?
That's very true. That's very true. I had a friend of mine tell me that she watched my YouTube videos for 6 months before she left her first comment. So there are those silent, and you, I'm talking to you out there. If you're one of them, we're talking to you. Just I tell you what, keep searching, keep researching, seek and ye shall find. I had a girl in the jail tell me recently she just wasn't sure about, well, I was talking to her about Christianity and this and that. And she said, well, I'm just not sure. I said, well, very good. Very good. I think that's good. That's healthy. I said, do the research. Do the research. Keep seeking and finding. And again, think critically. And doubt is a good thing, you know. So yes, you're right. There are people that are probably just kind of like looking back, thinking, you know, I don't know about all this. And it took it. If I will look back, it probably took. I don't know. I did kind of jump into carnivore after that experience I had with. I was so hungry. I was so hungry. I was ready for a ribeye.
You were the other extreme of that, like that situation. But I feel like it's funny for me because I started off, right, keto, eating all the vegetables, like doing the Dr. Berg way of things. And then you fast forward a little bit and I'm doing barely like any vegetables. And then you fast forward now, I'm not touching vegetables. But that took time. So this is the other part of it, is that you think you know something until you learn some more, and then you know something else and you learn some more. And let's not be afraid of that. Like, and I don't know if
Embrace it.
I will ever have vegetables again, or ever have,
Uh-huh.
well, I'm pretty sure I won't have fruit, but ever have vegetables again. Like I might. I don't
Yeah.
think that I'm afraid of vegetables. I just learned
Right.
that they're not the healthiest thing to eat. So because I understand what I learned from reading that book from Sally Norton, and I truly understand like what she was pointing out, I highly doubt I'm going to reintroduce a bunch of veg, but I'm not afraid of it either. If a piece of vegetable gets in my food, I think my body can manage it.
There is so much. There's so much. I like to say, if I don't need it, I don't eat it. But you know, I like how you said we don't have to be scared of it, and there is so much, and we will forever be learning. I hope lifelong learners, lifelong learners.
And also seeing vegetation for what it is. Go back in history, vegetation was used as a healing thing, right? It was medication. Go back in history, it was medication. And today, we're using it like candy. It's not what it's supposed to be. If you go to the drugstore and try to just buy some medication to take like that, they're going to tell you that you're crazy. They're going to tell you that maybe you have a problem. But somehow we're using what used to be medication like candy, and nobody seems to be bothered by this at all.
Yeah. Well, and then I hear these doctors, you know, especially Anthony Chafee, and I know you've interviewed him, but they've pointed out that plants don't have sharp teeth or claws, so their defense is going to be toxins and poisons and it's a real paradigm shift, though. I will say that for anybody that has yet to dip their toe in, I don't blame you. It's taking everything we ever heard about eat healthy, eat healthy, eat healthy, and honestly, just doing a complete 180. So
And also the fact that plants don't have teeth and they have these toxins, you know, that whole idea of hormesis. that we're constantly like, I think we don't realize that when you have a little bit of a toxin, yes, it helps you to be stronger. But if you keep going with that toxin, eventually you build up too much in your and you can create problems. We've been eating these veg for, well, it took my body 46 years before my hip couldn't manage anymore.
Hmm.
How long will it take your body? And these are the questions that we don't allow ourselves to stop and ask. However, we just have to look to our left or to the right to find family members or friends who are taking medications. They're not taking those medications for no reason. Their body has stopped managing. And
Yeah.
we need to understand that. This is not
Yeah. That's
natural
right.
aging.
Right. And there's so many medications we're all put on that are forever. That the idea is you would take it forever.
We can take a
Um,
medication forever, but we couldn't possibly eat keto or carnivore forever. That's the story we are asked to believe.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I just have no use for a lot of the things. When I see candy and you flip it over, and I point this stuff out to my kids all the time. Lake 40, red 40. Look at these things on the back. This is like the same stuff. It's not really, but I said, guys, this is like sucking on a Crayola marker. This is not natural. This is like, I feel like candy is like a bag of Legos, and they just sprinkle. My kids got an icy the other day, and she went and sprayed something on top. I said, what is that? It looked like, no, it was like a snow cone, a snow cone. And it looked like she was spraying water. She goes, oh, this is the sour. So she's just like spraying. It's just, I don't know. It's all, I'm just to the point where I just see it as, like you said one day, we can enjoy a cinnamon candle. You can enjoy the smell of it. You can enjoy the look of it, the colorful, but it just no longer looks like something I would chew and swallow. Just, candy at the gas station. And this grosses me out too. When I'm at a department store buying clothing and they have some type of chocolate sitting there at the countertop, you can see it hanging there. And those have been hanging there for like 8 months or a year because nobody goes into a department store to buy food. It just kind of grosses me out. I always figure a rule of thumb if it can sit there and still be edible and taste good 10 years later, there's just something not right. That's not natural.
Have you ever had the occasion where, like, you go in your cupboard and you pull out and you're like, oh my gosh, I like totally forgot this was there, and you just open it to see and it still looks normal? Now, clearly it wouldn't
I
taste normal, but why doesn't it have mold and all kinds of stuff? All it's like, and sometimes it's been open, so it's not even like it was sealed. I've gone in the cupboard because my kids ask for cookies because they want one, and then like it'll just stay there forever. And you open it and it's
Yeah,
just like, so they took three cookies and now I'm throwing a whole package of, but it's funny to me how they don't look wrong. Why don't they look
right.
wrong?
I know. I know. I think of that when I see vending machines. And, I mentioned on your last video that it is hard to get off sugar because it is everywhere. You can't hardly go. You can't get your tires changed without. There's a little, a gumball machine. You can get little Mike and Ike candies for a quarter. We can get a hit everywhere we go. But when you're I don't know. I was at our local jail the other day, and they have a vending machine in there. And again, people don't come in there for a snack. They come in there to visit people. And I just was sitting there waiting for them to bring the inmates. Violet, my life is so I had no idea I was going to run a jail ministry a year ago, but I'm sitting there waiting on the inmates, staring at this vending machine, thinking, how long have those Lay's potato chips? How long have those yellow, orange? It's all so unnatural. But I'm thinking, how long have they been in there? Because I've never seen somebody come refresh those. It's not meant for human consumption.
The sad part is they probably haven't been in there that long. That's the sad
Yeah,
part,
probably.
is that probably that turnover is pretty quick, right?
It
Maybe
might be.
maybe if they had some apples in there, they'd be spoiled, but I think the junk
That's a
food is
good
going to
point.
go through.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
We're so used to having junk at every opportunity. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But what we've learned today is that if we decide to have sardines every single meal, we can reset that, which I definitely, I love this because I want to finish with one thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about this. It doesn't have to be sardines. I think the basic
Hmm.
idea that I understand
Right.
from this was if you choose one thing you're going to eat and every time you're going to eat, you eat that, are you really hungry? Number one. And number two, it's about fueling, it's about health. It's no longer about having fun with food. And I love that because I definitely could do that.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right. Am I really hungry? Why am I chewing and swallowing? And it should be for energy. It's like taking your car to the gas station and you fill the tank. We don't need to fill the back seat. We don't need to fill the front seat. We can just fill the tank and then get rolling. Let's fuel up and then go use the energy. And yes, sardines apparently are some type of superfood. When I've heard about these metabolic resets before, I've also heard of people doing it with bone broth or eggs.
Cool.
But yeah, the idea is 3 or 4 days of if you're hungry, this will be your litmus test. This will be your litmus test. If you're not truly hungry unless you're hungry enough for a can of sardines. Violet, if you ever want to do a sardine fast, you holler at me. I'll do one with you.
Yeah, I think we have
I'll
enough sardines to get it going, so we can definitely.
I have a lot of sardines. I need to eat
Yeah, I
them.
need to get them out. Okay. I feel like we're gonna close this down right now. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
obviously, Emily, I'm gonna send people to your channel. Remind them what it is.
Well, it's just my name, Emily Myers, and I am really hit and miss over there. Um, I post every once in a while to share kind of what I'm currently doing, or um, my channel just sort of feels like a little hole in the wall where we can gather. But again, it's just another resource out there to know. And I'll tell your viewers, if you want to eat this way and you're wanting to um, take the road less traveled, you are not alone. There are Violets out there. There are Emily's out there. And so please feel free to stop by. It's just my name, Emily Myers. There's a picture of lions on there. That's my profile picture. I'm really not, I don't do much over there to try and grow my channel at all. I'm very, very busy with my kids in this ministry, and I'm having so much fun chatting with you to stay connected and really just continue to get the word out there. Because, like we were saying earlier, for some people, it might take them hearing it 10 or 15 times. It might take them watching us and saying, "All right, Emily's tried every diet out there. Is this another fad?" And I think my family's starting to realize it's not. Uh, so yeah, if just hang in there and know that you're not alone. You're not alone.
Perfect. So, wellness warriors, if you want to start keto or carnivore, or even just get some information on being healthy, click on the link that's right there. I'll meet you in that video. Bye.